Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anandita, and I welcome all of you to our Hydrogen Roadmap for India session at Connect Karo 2021. Today, we have brought together a great set of speakers to our panel who are from the industry, from academia, the R&D sector, and policymakers who will provide us with insights into the development of India's roadmap for hydrogen adoption. Now, I would request Dr. O.P. Agarwal, CEO WRI-India, to please set the stage for Hydrogen, a Roadmap for India. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Anandita, and a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on where you've joined in for. I'm really delighted to welcome you to this session. Hydrogen is increasingly becoming a very important part of sort of the trajectory that India wants to take. It does want to take on a leadership role on hydrogen. Hydrogen mission was announced in the last national budget. And what we are seeing is a lot of activity around developing a hydrogen roadmap. So it's one thing to want to, focus on hydrogen, build up an export market for hydrogen, become a hub for hydrogen, but how exactly do we go about doing it? There are nuts and bolts that have to be tied up. There are a number of challenges with hydrogen, not just in its production, but very importantly in its storage, transport, dispensation. Which are the uses that it can be put to? I think there are many challenges, and that makes it even more exciting. We in WRI are very excited to be working on this hydrogen piece. It's a very important part of the work that we will be taking up over the next few years, and that's why I'm looking forward to these discussions. It will help us a lot in guiding our own work plan. So with this, let me once again welcome all of you and really look forward to the discussion that we have over the next two sessions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Anand.
Thank you, officer. So we will launch our first, the paper, which is Basics of Hydrogen Technology. I think, yeah, over to you, Rohan. Krishnaveni will go ahead and walk us through. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anandita. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give you an overview of the paper that is being launched. Yeah. We can see that there is an increase in the population, and with this increase in the population, there is an increase in the demand, energy demand, and which is predominantly presently by the fossil fuels. And this increase in the demand, energy demand, is making us to higher emissions. And to limit these emissions, we are already witnessing the growth in renewable energy. And this growth is expected to be predominantly higher by 2050, which we can see in the graph from 2010 to 2050. Coming to the India's energy imports and emissions, we can see that energy demand in 2020 is around 820 and 880, and this is going to be double by 2040. And even when we look at the energy import bills, it is almost going to be 3 times more than what is the present energy import bills. Why India has to go for the green energy, green hydrogen now is because of the solar prices that are in competitive at rupees 2 at 2 rupees per kilowatt hour. And being like, the renewable prices enables us to meet the emissions under the Paris Agreement with green hydrogen as an alternative storage fuel, and hydrogen as on combustion gives water as an end product, just leading to the zero emissions. And then this will help make India self-reliant, and thus leading to the India's energy security for the country. And also hydrogen can be used as a for the storing the excess energy. We can now how hydrogen is produced. Presently almost 70 million tons of globally hydrogen is produced, and we can see the major pathways for these hydrogens is coming up from the reformation of the natural gases, and that is predominantly is around 78%, and followed by the coal gasification, which is around 18%, and both the process being carbon intensive. We have a very little portions coming up from the electrolysis of water and biomass gasification. So if we look at the different pathways, we have a different color codes that are been assigned to these pathways. Even though the hydrogen is colorless, when we get a hydrogen from natural gas, we have assigned that as a gray, and hydrogen from coal is given brown, and hydrogen, when we capture this carbon, we say from these two carbon intense process, we say it as blue. And when hydrogen is produced from electrolysis of renewable electricity, it is given the name green, and pink comes from the electrolysis of nuclear energy. Coming to the technology readiness, where exactly is this technology based on the operation and based on the maturity? There are different scales for the readiness of the technology. And here is what we see, that this steam reforming without carbon capture, you see that the technology readiness, it means like the maturity and the commercialization easily available is around 9 with the scale, and the efficiency of this method is around 70 to 80%. When we come to electrolysis of water, we see the scale ranging from 5 to 9, and the efficiency is between 60 to 70. So with the development of commercializing these things, the technology readiness of electrolysis can further be improved. Here we are able to compare the existing fuels for conventional fuels with the green hydrogen. Here, when we look at the energy content, energy mass content of the hydrogen, it is almost, you can see that it is almost 3 times more than that of the present conventional fuels that are available. And you also see that the emissions from these pathways and that of the green hydrogen, from green hydrogen, the emissions is almost zero. And if we look at the emissions from gray hydrogen, it also has some substantial emissions there. So electrolysis pathway will lead us to the zero emission, with the hydrogen giving the end product as water. Here in this figure, we are able to compare the different costs of the hydrogen production through the production pathways that are available uh, in the world. And here is the SMR being at 150 rupees and almost around $2 to $3. And even though currently the cost of the electrolysis being higher, it can be be equal in with price parity, maybe around with hydrogen based fossil fuel by 2030. And in throughout the value chain, the storage and the distribution of the hydrogen remains the challenge that we are looking at. So hydrogen can be stored based on can be achieved by either by compressing, where the pressure is around 350 to 700 bars, or where you can go ahead with a cryogenic pathway or cryogenic storage, where you reduce the temperature to around 250 degrees Celsius. Or new technology is coming up with the metal hydrates, where the hydrogen molecules are captured within these metal alloys, and it is like moderate, and the pressure here is around 30 to 100, and relatively high density and modular in operations. Coming to end use of these hydrogen, where hydrogen exactly can be used. Hydrogen can be used in decarbonizing the industries like steel. You have refineries where you use hydrogen for desulfurizing. Then you have steel industries, cement industries, and fertilizer industries, where ammonia can be produced using green hydrogen, making it as a green ammonia. Then we have mobility sector, where completely heavy duty vehicles can be applied, because based on the high energy content of the hydrogen, it can be used in the mobility sectors. And also for producing heat in the industries and even in the residential areas, hydrogen can be used. It can also be used for storing the excess energy, and also in meeting other requirements in heating of the industrial path. We can use hydrogen. So this is how the hydrogen economy works. And thank you all. Over to you, Anandita.
Thank you, Krishnaveni. The link to the paper will be shared here in the chat section in a little while from now. And now I would request Mr. Pavan Mulkutla, Director of Clean Mobility and Energy Tech at the WRI-India, to please moderate the session on emerging opportunities for hydrogen economy in India. Over to you, Pavan.
Thank you, Anandita, and a very good afternoon to everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to have a panel with eminent personalities from industry, academia, and research institutions. And without much delay, I'll start my question. So my first panelist, Akshay. Akshay, I would just wanted to start asking you that ACME has been producing hydrogen. So what has been the experience in terms of your integrated hydrogen production facilities? And based on those learnings, what do you think should be the policy and framework? Because I think that is the key aspect that we are looking at on hydrogen pathway or for India. So over to you to really help us understand what's happening in India right now.
First of all, let me thank you, Pavan, for inviting me here on this panel, and I look forward to the discussion. and I also welcome the fellow panelists. Look forward to a great discussion today. From ACME's perspective, I mean, everybody knows and is aware of ACME as one of India's largest solar power developers. And one of the decision to get into or to move into hydrogen business or green hydrogen business rather has been a very thought through process for all of us here at ACME. As Pawan mentioned, we currently have a commissioned pilot project, to some extent in Rajasthan in India. We are currently producing around 1 ton of green hydrogen from our project in Rajasthan. And that particular hydrogen generation is going to go into the production of green ammonia, because as you can understand that the current economics or the logistics involved in hydrogen transportation is still under development, and there are various ways we are looking at it. But ammonia is a more safer option for us to sort of transport hydrogen over longer distances and through various means to end use applications, which are spread all across the country. So we are producing 5 ton, or we are going to produce 5 ton ammonia, green ammonia from our Rajasthan plant. So as for the learnings, it is a very evolving process. We ourselves are learning quite a lot of aspects of project development. We are proud to say that we have an internal R&D team which is looking after all the aspects of project development, right from conceptualization to the execution stage. One of the ways which we commission this is, first of all, what is the location? Because that is the most essential question. Because as you can understand, that almost 65% of the capital cost or the overall per unit cost of hydrogen depends on the power and electricity. And what is the resources you're using. So, location has to be rightfully chosen. That's why we have chosen Rajasthan, because it's one of the highest, solar radiations in the country. And so location is a very important aspect that we initially chose, that, where do we get the most efficient and most, firm kind of renewable energy sources, because you need renewable energy sources to produce green hydrogen at scale and at that particular size. So, location has been one of our key aspects. Plus, the other most important aspect was how to make the power sort of, since renewable energy is not stable, it is informed power. So, how do we make it stable enough for running the electrolyzers? Because, electrolyzers do need certain sensibilities, certain stability in the power structure that is fed into the electrolyzers, and you need all of those aspects to run, in a perfect manner for it to go through. So, we are working with a particular technology here, which, requires a lot of design attributes, which are certainly very, very, very challenging for us. And how do we make it run in a stable manner? And how, and then, hydrogen is one part of the project that we are developing here. The other aspect is how do we convert, green hydrogen and get it to be converted into green ammonia, because it requires an ammonia synthesis loop and which needs to run on a 24/7 basis, because one of the things that we understood initially was that electrolyzers can still be ramped up and ramped down in a way, but the synthesis loop needs to run in a more structured fashion. So how do we make power available to all of these applications within that project, and how do we manage those power distribution in that particular stage is one of the most key learnings for us. What we have done is managed it through additional design avenues that our team has come up, and that's how our project has been quite successful. We have started with the production of hydrogen side, and ammonia production is due to start soon. The other important aspects have been on the project development side is on the temperature and other aspects of running the electrolyzers, and what kind of selection of technology needs to be done, because there are multiple technologies available, as you had seen on the screen. You have the alkaline, you have the PEM, you have other aspects also which are coming through quite rapidly in the overall ecosystem of hydrogen. So choosing the right technology is a key aspect. We have chosen a particular technology which is currently working well for us. And how do we comprehend all of those attributes together has made our project quite successful in that sense. So all in all, these are the challenges that we faced in the project development stage. But then now that we are now talking about not only producing hydrogen, but even you supplying it to our end use customers. And logistics becomes again a huge challenge. Are not that developed on hydrogen storage and handling. Although we do have certain aspects of SMPV rules which do govern storage and handling of hydrogen, but how do we make it more robust, and how do we make it more in tandem with what's happening currently? So all of those aspects have been quite challenging for us to learn, and we are learning on the process as well. So this is something that we have been looking at. So it's been a wonderful experience for us, and that's why we are very grateful that this project has now been successfully commissioned. This is going to be the world's first integrated facility on green hydrogen and green ammonia. And not only that, we are also developing a large-scale project in Oman. So that is to your question on the learning side, Pawan. To the question on the policy and regulatory aspects, we are working very closely with Government of India to enforce the right kind of policies, to bring in the right kind of policy measures and regulatory measures to support green hydrogen industry in India. And there has been quite a lot of successes. As you can see, the government is quite keen to develop this. We are just facilitating that discussions in multiple forms and shapes. We have the National Hydrogen Mission announced in February this year, and Honorable Prime Minister also announced that in his speech from the Red Fort and on our Independence Day. So the government's thinking is in the right direction. We appreciate that, and I think multiple ministries are now looking at it. So what do we need? And I'll quickly finish this up. Is that we need to prioritize. We know that green hydrogen is the way forward, and I think the government has now come to the conclusion that this is how India should look at the hydrogen economy. Because there will be challenges on the blue side, and India should, since we have a resource-rich country, we should directly go and look at green hydrogen as the way forward. Then mandates is an important aspect of market creation, which again the government is very keen to work with, with the industry. There's a draft policy in place which is currently undergoing discussions at the ministerial level, so that will be good. We as an industry, I think if we have mandates from say 5 to 10%, and then 10 to 20% blending of hydrogen in the various applications on refineries, CGDs, and other aspects, I think that will create the right mechanism for the market to develop and for the demand to be created, so that supply issues are not constrained in any form or shape. Then some of the aspects that we would require on the policy front would be that we can look at export parity for green hydrogen, green ammonia, like what the oil and gas sector is getting. To improve the aspects of our export-oriented markets. So India to emerge as an export hub, we need some kind of policy incentives in place. Then we need the stable long-term and tax and regulatory policies and incentives, both on the manufacturing side, be it on the import of electrolyzers. Plus, we should also provide impetus to local production of electrolyzers at giga-scale sizes. Then land is going to be a key aspect. We feel that this is something which is very important. That large-scale land banks needs to be aggregated, or to a mechanism which should be aggregated to give sort of impetus to the hydrogen industry, because land would be a big challenge going forward for us. Already renewable energy is dependent on land, but for hydrogen to come in, we need all those policies. And then all those aspects, some of the aspects already been mentioned in some of the announcements recently, like the open access and the green renewable purchase obligation. So all of that, the government is currently actively looking at, and we welcome that. So similar kind of policy measures over a long-term period with stable policies in place. I think those are the most important aspects that, as an industry, we are currently looking at. So with that, I'll just take a pause here and let everyone follow the discussion. Thank you.
So much, Akshay. I think you mentioned like there were 4 or 5 takeaways for me: the mandates, blending, the export parity, the land, and then we're also talking about long-term stable policies, which are kind of 5 essential requirements for or kind of policy enhancers for ensuring that the hydrogen economy becomes a reality in India. Now, moving on, I have a question for Dr. Rajalakshmi, who's an advisor to DST.
Yes.
We heard what Akshay has been talking about, and I have like twofold questions for you. One, we have seen draft NHEMs, and we have been talking a lot this year about hydrogen. Do you think that India is ready for an electrolysis pathway right away, or should we really look at other pathways like biomass or carbon capture? And my second aspect that I would request you to touch upon is also that how do we really indigenize the manufacturing capabilities in India? Because all these technologies don't really exist in India right now. We are going to import all this. So if you can really walk us through your thoughts around that, that would be very extremely helpful, Dr. Rajalakshmi. Over to you.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my views about the hydrogen technology, which is being a talk of the town recently. The two buzzwords are only hydrogen and climate challenge. So if hydrogen technology is not going to come, the climate challenge cannot be addressed. That's a thing which we are all looking at it now. And all of you are aware that green hydrogen is going to be may play a major role in the energy sector. However, out of the four pillars, hydrogen storage and transportation is one of the very important pillars. And if you look at it, this hydrogen storage is a key enabling technology, and none of the current technologies satisfies the requirements sought by the manufacturers as well as end users. And as all of you may be aware that the produced hydrogen will be stored in the form of compressed gas, cryogenic liquid, or metal hydrates, as your previous speaker was telling. But India does not have so far the compressed hydrogen to use it for normal use, except the strategic sector. So it does not come to the common market yet. When you come to the compressed hydrogen storage up to high pressure compressor containers, it has got its own weight penalty and technology penalty, etc. And recently, of course, material also they are using a carbon fiber composite cylinders, and right now people started working for FRPs also to take up the care of that. And as of now, I think the type 3 or type 4 cylinders will be in place in the next decade. When you say that our Reliance chairman announced $1 per kg or $1 per storage and one in 1 decade. So in such a case, I think the type 3 compressed cylinders will come in place. And coming to your next question of electrolysis or biomass, and though everybody talks about green hydrogen, it is not going to take place immediately. It's not only for India, throughout the world. So you need to go from the gray to pink hydrogen. Pink, of course, many people will have their own reservations. So you start from whatever hydrogen is available, at least to address the climate challenge first. And then go in grades, gray, blue, etc. And finally, now you see that your previous speaker, Akshay Bharadwaj, said that already he has developed a 1-ton hydrogen electrolyzer. So it is not that difficult to make it. It is possible if the industries take a step. I'm pretty sure that they'll be able to do it. So only thing which I could not see from the Akshay Bharadwaj's discussion is he says location, etc. But the resource material water is very scarce in Rajasthan. So you need about 9 liters of water to get 1 kg of hydrogen or so, something of that sort. But if you choose a place like that, then the technology should not go as a waste at the end of the day. So you develop lots of things, but we have to consider the resource material also. So in a way, green hydrogen is good for electrolysis. A proof of concept has been already proven by ACME. However, we are a country with a lot of population. Biomass will definitely take into the premier stage. CCUS technology is not yet ripe in our country, but biomass is upcoming, and I'm pretty sure that this will compete with the electrolysis technology because we have a lot of biomass. We have not estimated that yet completely, but as a general rule, no thumb rule, we know this much of population, this much of biomass. So it is possible that biomass can take a major role in that. And you know that IOCL and other people are Professor Dasappa from IIC also started working on that. And we have 3 centers of excellence on CCUS also at the R&D level. But I don't know how far it will take for the technology. But as a proof of concept, electrolysis is already available in many of the R&D institutes and at the technology level with ACME also. And there is one more company in Bangalore also, Enarca is also working on that Omium. So maybe you might have heard of that also. It's not that difficult that it can go. Is that okay or anything else?
So this is good to hear. So this brings me to Lieutenant Colonel Monish Ahuja, that we heard Dr. Rajalakshmi saying that biomass is the probably the pathway, and it can be on parity with the electrolysis also that we are talking about.
Yeah.
But when we see at the draft NHEM, the estimate from biomass itself is a very small percentage, and also biomass typically a lot of challenge.
It will be modified soon. It will be today also morning we had a meeting with the DST and CSAR, and everybody appreciated the efforts taken for the biomass, and slightly it will be modified. See, this is only a framework. NHM is only a framework. Always you can tinker it and then bring it. And that's not that difficult.
Yeah. So my question is to Monish Ahuja, that you are at the forefront of wanting to look at the whole biomass pathway, and we also do realize that although it's there, but there are a lot of challenges in terms of the logistics of getting it, getting the waste to a certain place. Do we really even think about, do we want to even use land? How do you segregate? How do you then store? So there is this whole process and challenges involved when we are talking about the biomass pathway. What policies and incentives specifically you think would be needed to support the biomass gasification as a technology for producing hydrogen in India? If you want to talk about scale.
Thanks, Pawan, for first inviting me to this seminar on this all important subject. A very warm good afternoon to my co-panelists and all the viewers of this seminar. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Monish Ahuja, the Chairman Managing Director of PRESPIL, which is Punjab Renewable Energy Systems Private Limited. And we work in the biomass supply chain management across India with a forward integration into multiple forms of energy. So we do electricity, heating, cooling at industrial level boilers for steam requirements of industry, forward integrated to compressed biogas, ethanol, sustainable aviation fuel, drop-in fuel, and so on and so forth. So every technology which could utilize biomass as an input, we are participants in those projects. We ourselves build, own, operate projects where we are using up to 200, 250 tons per day of biomass, either in a loose form or in a densified form of briquettes and pellets. So why I mentioned this, Pawan, specifically is there is no problem about availability of biomass. The problem statement is to put in processes outside a project boundary to be able to do sustainable biomass supply chain management. And that entails a couple of things which are very important. One is, depending on the type of biomass, you require to set up processes to be able to aggregate it, store it, maintain quantity and quality, so that on a daily basis, just in time, it can be supplied to a project which can take it as an input, depending on shape and form as required. So specifically when we talk about green hydrogen, utilization of biomass for the green hydrogen through the gasification route, it needs to be developed in a decentralized format across India or across geographical areas. And this is where you will cut down on the transportation cost of the hydrogen, which otherwise you would have from larger plants going to various sub hubs where you would need to have fuel cells, or you would need to have kind of replenishment of the hydrogen in the format it is being used. So it could be transportation sector, it could be storage formats. One will have to make a holistic plan of the entire ecosystem to be developed. Hydrogen from the gasification route, or let's say syngas from the gasification route, is going to be more expensive if you just compare it apple to apple from a project where you're going to do solar or you're going to do pink hydrogen to say it is generated in a large scale at this cost. So you will have to look at a holistic development of cost to cross subsidize it with the transportation cost which you would be reducing, the storage cost which you would be reducing, and thereby come to price matrices which you're going to get as a blend for hydrogen. the number of availability of agricultural residue biomass in India being an agrarian country, data put out by government is 500 million metric tons per annum. Data which I would stick my neck out to put out is in excess of 800 million metric ton per annum on a pan-India basis. So if we are able to harness this potential, we actually would not need the other forms of hydrogen that we are going to look at. As a hydrogen economy to develop, while we hear what ACME has done or where policy interventions are coming up, but you need to actually start bottom up. If we have to be successful in the hydrogen economy, we have to take the usage of hydrogen to the rural sector where we want it to start from. And that's where you need to get the generation of energy happening. And that's the space we need to start looking at, if it has to be the biomass route. In terms of cost and in terms of the 1-1-1 model that somebody mentioned, or the transportation cost, or what we are talking about, the removal of the interstate transmission charges, or what we are mentioning about is we would have solar energy or nuclear energy. All of this is good, but ultimately, what is the cost of that per unit energy? And when you look at the energy cost today, while we say solar is 2 rupees, but to any consumer, be it industrial or be it domestic, our cost of electricity is not lower than 7-8 rupees a unit. So ultimately, at the user point, the cost of electricity is not coming down. So the inefficiencies of the system from a 2 rupee unit generation going up to a user getting it at 7-8 rupees needs to be removed. And that's where the focus needs to come. And that's where we need to be able to say that at X rupees a unit, a hydrogen generation plant would get its energy at. And that's a fixation which we would need from the policymakers or the regulators. Now, for that to happen, what is it in the value chain is either till a time that we reach scale and size going to get subsidized, or what is it that in this value chain somebody is going to take a piece out of it and pay for it. Ultimately, it's the consumer who's going to pay for it. Hence, when we are talking about a green hydrogen economy, we will have to look at the entire value chain of development and simultaneously work on it. Again, I come back to, I think, biomass, that's more dearer to us in the work that we do. We are working with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Rajalakshmi Madam mentioned it, with Professor Dasappa and team, to do couple of pilots on different types of feedstocks, so that, and pilots of scale, mind you, so that we are able to demonstrate what is it going to be in terms of actual costs, and then look at the policymakers to say, this is how we are going to reduce it. And I think one of the most important factors here in our country would be the cost of capital. So the supply chain management today, as the biomass supply chain management specifically, is not recognized as an independent business activity in India, and hence working capital debt loans from financial institutions are not available for it. So you have a plethora of industries today looking at this biomass. We have a biofuels program which has been announced by Ministry of Petroleum. You have the Satat scheme, you have the 2G ethanol projects, large numbers, billions of dollars of investment happening on the ground. But the supply chain management is yet missed out. You have a green hydrogen which is announced, the Prime Minister has announced it. Where is the support to the supply chain management of biomass? Still not looked at. And I think the problem statement here is that there is no nodal agency today for the biomass supply chain management to be looked at within India. So again, the regulators have to come about to say, how are they going to address this particular aspect for sustainability of the projects to be successful to happen. So I think I'll rest my case here. Happy to discuss more as we move ahead.
You have raised quite interesting points, Manish, in terms of the need for recognizing the industry itself, and ensuring that the supply side management issues are addressed. Moving on, I have question for Professor Ghosh. um, one is twofold. What role can academia play? And we see a complete gap in terms of the research, and we see that a lot of the there's a lot of partnerships that are coming up, whether it's with ISCs or IITs, which will be critical in the R&D. And the second aspect is also that the importance of indigenizing the production facilities to bring down the cost. And what you see is the role that academia can play at these two fronts. So over to you, Professor Ghosh. You are on mute, Professor Ghosh.
Yeah, sorry. Good afternoon, and thank you, Pawanji, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. And also, I'd like to just thank also WRI-India for this opportunity as well. So, first of all, in terms of academia, sometimes this is a question because I'm trying to work not also in terms of academia, I'm also trying to take mainly fuel cell technology up to industry level. And even I'm sitting in this particular office flooded with the components which is also equivalent to is used in the industry. And sometimes also I hear that our role probably is only to teach and to do small research. Somebody told me, and which I did not like personally. As an academia, I wanted to see that whatever I'm doing in my lab, it should actually cross the door of my lab, and it should go in the society, and it should actually play a major role. That's my interest, and that's what I try to do research, because academia, in the sense I'm telling as an individual academia, probably it will not be reflecting the entire society. I wanted to give an example. Recently, I tried to deploy a particular system, which is an altitude of 16,000 feet in the North Sikkim for an Indian Army, which includes, of course, renewable energy, which of course includes hydrogen production, which of course use fuel cell. Also, people have missed out when we are talking about hydrogen. We have always forgotten oxygen, and after second wave that oxygen was how much important. And I have come up with a particular model for remote places where you can give actually, and it's a model for healthcare system where you can give power as well as oxygen combinedly from renewable energy. It's a green oxygen in addition to green hydrogen also. And this is always being actually ignored. As I worked with Indian Army at that altitude of 16,000 feet, Lieutenant Colonel Manish Ahuja can understand that 16,000 feet means the oxygen level is so poor. So I proposed them that we'll be using electrolysis, not only for hydrogen for energy, also for the oxygen. But while doing this is what I was telling that I hear from my other colleagues sometimes, that, okay, you should be happy doing the lab research, which I'm not interested at all. Whatever I try to do, I try to translate it in the industry level. Now, the problem what I find in terms of fuel cell, one of the major challenge what I'm feeling is that always we are being compared with that international benchmark. That is one of the major problem what I find when I'm trying to show some performances as an academia, and then they start taking a particular performances, and they always say that where you are. And when they tell that, they always forget that this particular company or industry, they have put 50 years of their effort, manpower, money, and everything. And then all of a sudden we are being asked that, okay, it's something like that in our country. Let's say if you take a player who is playing, let's say, for example, Ronaldo, and then you are taking it's a small player who is actually learning, and you ask them to actually compete with them. And that's what it happens. And that's what in our academia also I'm feeling personally, that we are being actually pushed to a competition where they did not know that these people have an experience for 50 years, and we are actually lagging behind in all this technology. At least I feel fuel cell and electrolysis 30 years at least behind the entire world. And you can see that example that in the entire country we have only one defueling station of hydrogen. That's in Noida, in Delhi. It is so unfortunate that people do not know this fuel cell technology even. If you see in the background, I have made a small scooter. Sometimes when I'm running around, even in IIT Bombay, people do not know what this fuel cell means. So actually public awareness is one of the very important thing which is completely missing. And that has to be actually, if they are not being connected, ultimately the end user, if they do not know, it is not going to be successful. Other thing what I find that this particular research is very expensive, and it's very difficult to equip all the labs in our country with this all these facilities, very difficult. And as an academia, we should feel that sometimes we have a privilege being an IIT Bombay, probably we get the funding and we have the state of art, all the equipments. We must think that all, like me, all the other people, we should open this for the other people who does not have these particular facilities. And we should welcome them that, okay, this is an government funded money, it's a taxpayers money. I am being in charge only as a caretaker. I should make sure that all the people in this country who are not having that privilege, but there are lots of people, they have that capability, they can do good research. And I try to tell my other colleagues as well, and I always open, there are some other people also, they know that I have shared my equipments, and now I try to go to small colleges who do in small in the, not in the terms of knowledge, small in the terms of probably funding, and always I tell them that you come here, and I try to facilitate them so that they can take this forward. So this is the, I think this is one of the major role how we can play in academia when you have knowledge and they have some intellectual capabilities, and if we just merge with them, then definitely we can bring this particular technology up to the mark, and whatever we have lagging behind the world probably can come up. So I don't know, this is what the first question, you had other question, probably I have missed out that one. Can you just kindly repeat it again?
So I was asking Professor Ghosh that, the cost of some of these technologies are quite high. So what opportunities exist for us in terms of, where do you see that indigenizing this technology and, producing low cost? Do you see, we understand the cost of electrolyzers are quite high. The fuel cell technology is talked about. It's a welcome move that you're saying that, let's open up this for industry and other partners. But do you see that we will be moving in that direction where we'll start producing electrolyzers in India?
Yeah, so let me take out now this Madam Krishna Veni Madam was actually presenting there. She presented that the cost of hydrogen from this green hydrogen is 400 rupees per kg. If you take that, I'm giving that example because when you tell that it's very expensive, we tell, let us try to understand how much expensive is this. So 400 rupees per kg of hydrogen. Let us take now Toyota Mirai car, which is available in the market, and this is actually it can travel 500 kilometer in 5 kg of hydrogen. This is that proven. Now, if I multiply these two, you can get that how much it comes. It comes 2,000 rupees for 500 kilometer. Now, let us take a car at present what we have on road. And if you take, let's say, 17 kilometer per liter, the ballpark number if I'm taking, for 500 kilometers, I need 30 liters of petrol. Multiply by 100, it becomes 3,000 rupees for my petrol charges. So how is it expensive even if you take the green hydrogen? So either I'm going by that number because I started calculating when this discussion was happening. So if we take 400, even if you take 600 rupees per kg, still if I multiply by 5 kg and 500 kilometers, that is equivalent to today's petrol cost. If you are taking the life, this is the only petrol cost.
Ghosh, sorry to interrupt. You're talking about the operating cost, but we're talking here about the capital cost, right?
Yes.
So in operation parity, I do understand that there is, it's already proven. But in terms of capital cost, when you're talking about investing, wanting to invest crores of money and unavailability of technology, how does that work out? Yeah.
Yes, I think capital cost, this is the one of the problem when you are taking this type of system. And it is capital cost is very high. But also at the same time, if you to go for electrolyzer, then if you take the total lifetime of 40,000 operating hours, this is the actual lifetime that we should expect. And that's what when you are doing also the research in electrolysis, we should keep it in mind that along with the cost, it is the life also is very important, and combinedly together, that is the important parameter, not cost or not life. And that's what I want to know, that if you are talking about this 400 rupees per kg, this is means probably it is not the investment cost, it's a life cycle cost. So I think we should be taking whether for PV or any other thing, we should be always taking the life cycle cost instead of taking the capital cost. Otherwise, it will be very difficult if you take the life cycle, only the investment cost or capital cost.
Fair enough. Thank you. Now I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to bring in Dr. Selvaraj. Dr. Selvaraj, you have been working with NCL is directly working with government on the NHCMs, and you have also been talking about the deployment and research on PEM electrolyzers, which is in advanced stage. So what is the timeline for such technologies? I'm just continuing the conversation that we had with Professor Ghosh, that when would this technology start competing in India with existing technologies from an economic, commercial, and technical standpoint?
Thank you very much. First of all, I thank WRI and you all for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share my opinions here. I also welcome the co-panelists, and I listen from many of them. A lot of interesting points coming up. So as you said, that CSAR, I mean, I belong to NCL, CSAR, but then CSAR at large is trying to take the major role in the hydrogen economy or the hydrogen mission that is being proposed now, which may take at least a decade for us to realize the impact of it in Indian hydrogen economy dreams. But CSAR has been working on hydrogen for at least for 2 decades, and starting from 2002-3 onwards, CSAR in different labs, say NCL, Secretary Karakudi, we are working on hydrogen programs, starting from electrolyzer to fuel cells. So on fuel cell side, there is a big progress, and you might have heard that KPIT, it was in news that KPIT had the first car running on completely indigenized fuel cell made by CSAR technology. On the electrolyzer side, there are a lot of developments on PEM electrolyzers. Secretary Karakudi has already demonstrated that, and there are also many other small labs which are contributing it. And in NCL, we are also involved in PEM electrolyzer development, but recently there are some other change in this direction. I was happy to see the co-panelist, Mr. Akshay, was talking about the plant running at 1 ton capacity, which is quite encouraging. And I think we should really appreciate them to take the lead and demonstrate that it is possible in India that we can make such kind of quick investment and quick observation that it is possible, which will help everybody to walk with a lot of confidence that yes, it is practically reachable. On the other hand, if you look at the technology itself, it is still, if you say like a PEM technology developed within India, completely indigenized, and there are a lot of ifs and buts, because it has so much of technological integration needed, and which we still depend on a lot of imports. Though we have achieved certain levels of technological advancement in terms of PEM, for example, the basic components of PEM, the membrane, which is a core, is still to be indigenized, and we have a lot of efforts going on across India in various labs, CSAR as well as IITs. But then overall, as you see now, those activities are mostly in publication level, or maybe a kind of patent, the initiation level. But then the practical usage of mass producing it to replace the global import, that what we get from Western world is yet to be achieved. So the technology per se is available in India as of now in industry, but mostly it is all the components or the spares imported. We have to look at how to make it indigenized. So in the larger part of the hydrogen mission frame, I understand that there is a bigger interest for India to indigenize the technology, which is a big thing that we have to achieve, because most of the parts that we are using, either in electrolyzer as well as in fuel cells, those we do not have an indigenous IP portfolio, so which we need to develop, which is a big bottleneck for us, and we need to work on that. And CSAR Is already working with MNRE. As you know, MNRE is the nodal ministry for this hydrogen mission, and DST and CSIR are partnering with MNRE in implementing this. And CSIR has developed a model that will work as a roadmap for hydrogen mission to be implemented in CSIR by creating a center of excellence in hydrogen economy. So that is already taking place in the last 2 months. We have tried to talk to several industry partners and academia and research labs. So NCL will be a kind of nodal lab to implement this program. And we have planned to have some certain clear-cut programs which will have a short-term returns as well as mid-term and long-term. And CSR is also trying to connect with industry which are interested, starting from production of hydrogen to storage to utilization. And there are already enough major players in India in terms of industry as well as research labs are already on board. And what we are trying to do is that to connect them and then try to see that how we can exchange ideas and expertise available. CSIR labs, there are about some 35, 36, 37 labs across India having different kind of expertise. For example, we have certain labs working on storage devices where, for example, 300 bar pressure cylinders are being currently developed indigenously. We are trying to make how to improve it up to 500 bars or even 750 bars. So recently, these kind of projects are being considered in the Center of Excellence framework, and we are trying to collect people with different expertise who can deliver something and connect them with the industry who are looking for them. So in that way, I believe that CSR will have a lot of role in making the connects to work. Particularly when you come to electrolyzer part, CSIR NCL, we have taken up a next generation technology, which many of you may be aware, as the electrolyzer evolved from alkaline electrolyzer technology, basically the diaphragm based, and then it moves on to PEM, and PEM has now really in the matured state, and people are enjoying the benefit of it. But what next is that something that we have to look at, because in India, if you want to realize the hydrogen economy, the main key factor is how much we can make it affordable. Currently, the cost being discussed by many co-panelists, the current rate is from $5 to $6 per kg, and then the target is kept by at least by $2, if not $1, within a short period of span. But to achieve this, the key point is making it affordable. That means per kg cost has to come down to $1 or $2. To make this happen is that the major contributing factor for the capex or opex is a technology by itself. The technology PEM is known to have the dependency on precious metal catalysts, which is taking a large cost on that. And because it is to be run on an acidic environment, the MOC of the electrolyzer or the BOP, everything has to be planned according to the technology, which is to resist the corrosive atmosphere. So what next is, can we take the traditional alkaline electrolyzer and then take the advantage from that and mix it with PEM, which is what is the evolving technology, which is called AEM. You may be aware. AEM has the blend of both alkaline, traditional, and also the PEM, because AEM has again working on AEM membrane. It's an anion exchange membrane, so which gives us opportunity to use mild alkaline solutions. Okay, and then we can get rid of this precious metal catalyst. Though we look at from a overall point of view, these two may look like it's a very low contributing factor to the overall cost. But the moment you come to the electrolyzer body or the MOC, currently the most used material for a long life electrolyzer is titanium based or its alloys. So the cost from titanium, because of its acidic environment, to be met with that, The moment you want to bring it down to SS, which is possible in alkaline medium, the cost comes down by 1/5 or 1/6. And then the life of the electrolyzer, we are talking about a few, maybe 10,000 or to 40,000 or 50,000 hours of operating span. Then we need to have something like a decoring so that we can replace the whole MEA and then the membrane, everything. Then again initiate back the electrolyzer for the full capacity. This is going to cost a lot on the OPEX. So to eliminate this, if we have to have a different option available, then we should explore. So that's the way the AEM technology is coming up, which allows you to work with cheap catalysts, which are non-precious in nature. So there are a lot of publication available, and then the technology is also developing. NCL is working on that. And then last 2 years, we have done a lot of work, and then it has reached to the level of TRL4, and we are expecting that to be scaled up to TRL6, so that there can be a kind of industrial exploitation possible, at least in the next 1 to 2 years, which seems to be very, very promising. So what I'm trying to say is that if you want to reduce the cost of hydrogen, which is very much relevant to at least a developing country like India, the key factor lies on how to make the whole technology commercially affordable. So in that way, we look at AEM can be a good candidate in the future. So that's about AEM. But coming back to the CSAR role, we are planning to have industries on board from the beginning itself in developing the electrolyzer technology. As Akshay was, he was referring that already a plant running. We would like to see that what is the cost affordability that we can bring in this technology. As of now, we have no idea of, in an Indian scenario, what is going to the cost, at least in the next 1 year, what is going to be the cost of electrolyzer based hydrogen, which is we call the green hydrogen. And the moment we go to we talk about the green hydrogen, it is only like, on name we say the green hydrogen, or is it going to be really green? That depends on the power that we take it from for the electrolysis process. If you take it from the grid, again, it's no more green. So as Akshay was telling, that if it is only completely renewable based, then we can see that it's a green hydrogen. But in the beginning of the discussion, I think it was mentioned that there will be we have to be colorblind for some time until we reach to a level of realizing the green hydrogen in India. It is true. Yeah. So I'll stop here. That's what I was just going to close it. Yeah.
So this is a good understanding of the AEM technology that you're talking about, and how the blending or the combination with PEM and alkaline could really bring down the cost, and the TRL that you're talking that is at 4 and it can move up to 6 and it needs to be exploited industry. That's a kind of little fascinating to hear that all this is happening in India right now. But still, sorry for bringing you as the last speaker, but we also have very short time limited. But listening to what's happening here in India, and as Greenstat, I know that you're very keen to be a part of India's hydrogen journey. What would you really suggest in terms of how the policies are going to evolve, and where do you see we are heading, in which direction?
Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this panel discussion. It has been quite interesting to listening to the different participants. I would say that we started out with a climate challenge. It's a global challenge, and then we need global solutions. I and Greenstat really want to participate in transferring our expertise and know-how and technology to India. So India can fulfill the vision of your Honorable Prime Minister to be a green hydrogen hub. I think, first of all, please do not try to invent the wheel again. India, as we have addressed here, is behind most of the countries in the region and in the world. You need to get up to the line with the other ones so you can compete. We are not talking about Indianizing the technology, we are talking about making it global. You can't kind of develop special policies and procedures that works in India. They need to work and be harmonized with the global market if you want to be a leader and not a follower and depending on other technology. I'm quite sure that Norwegian, who has been a front runner, and we have been producing green hydrogen since 1927, we have a lot of experience that we want to share, as I said, and we have set up Indo-Norwegian Center of Excellence together with the Indian Oil at the research center in Delhi. And everyone is welcome to take part in this. We are also doing pilot and demo projects. We have several of them. We have already now 10 pilot and demo projects that we are going to implement with the pressure from the government, the local states, to be the first one to come up with these facilities. What we want with these facilities, in addition to produce green hydrogen, it is to share this knowledge and make sure that both the bureaucrats, the different agencies do have the knowledge that we can implement this safely. What my concern is in this discussion is that safety is not on your top priority list. That is the first thing that needs to be taken care of. And Norway has an excellent record on this. And we have already started working with the different agencies and the government institutions to make sure that we can give what India needs and they can change it, they can pick and choose what is the priorities, but please take focus on that. I'm quite convinced that India will be a global leader in green hydrogen with the vision of the government and all the excellent people and researchers that I have been meeting over my time here in India. I think that if you get equal terms and conditions, that means that you are kind of taking part in what is already there of technology and experience. You will be certainly the one who takes this to the next level. I would like to comment on some of the other things that have been coming up, but I know that you are running short of time, so I hope I will get an opportunity later. But please, thank you very much for giving the time to speak here today.
Thank you, Sturl. And unfortunately, as Sturl mentioned, we are running into our second session where our panelists have started joining. I would request that if you all can, there are some questions that have been posted in the chat box, if you can respond to that. And with that, thank you, Sturl, Professor Ghosh, Dr. Rajalakshmi, Dr. Selvraj, Lieutenant Colonel Manish Ahuja, and Akshay Bharadwaj for a fantastic discussion, very relevant to India today in terms of technology, economic financing, and the feasibility of bringing making green hydrogen a reality. So with that, I thank you all once again, and we move on to our second session. So Anindita, I would really request you to kind of introduce the panelists and move forward with our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll take leave.
Thank you, Pawan. So we will move on to our next session, and probably maybe I don't know if I think we have a few of our panelists who have not yet joined. So do we wait for a couple of minutes? And okay, so I would request Soham to start with a short presentation on hydrogen policy roadmap for India. Over to you, Soham.
Thank you very much, Anand. I'll just share my screen. Can you see the presentation? Yeah. Perfect. So thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to session 2. Session 2 would be mostly looking at the roadmap development of hydrogen in India and what sort of things it would take to build it across for decades up until 2050. So to begin with, I think in the previous discussion and through my colleague's presentation, I think we are quite used to the fact that why we need hydrogen is mostly to enable cross-sectoral decarbonization, to deal with the rising energy security concerns and the rising import bills, and to ensure that we have a long-term energy storage option available to integrate with our rising renewable energy installations. What remains as a question is, okay, we need to get to it, but we just don't know how to get to it, and there's a lack of a roadmap in place at this point. So in this next slide, we have developed a preliminary roadmap, which we think could be relevant, specific to India's case. So we are aware that at this point, most of the hydrogen which we have is grey, and we need to move to green. But it has to be noted that the transition cannot take place over a certain period of years. It's a decade-long transition, and to meet the demand which is expected to increase of hydrogen in its existing use cases and the new use cases which are evolving, it is crucial that we take into consideration other low carbon hydrogen production pathways as well. So other low carbon hydrogen pathways could be a biomass gasification with or without CCUS. We have without CCUS, you're still looking at a carbon neutral situation. So biomass gasification for India's context is definitely very relevant. Alongside that, we could further look at coal gasification with CCUS and SMR with CCUS, depending on the maturity of CCUS as a technology moving forward. The point of the fact is that the inclusion of other low carbon pathways and coexistence of green hydrogen and low carbon hydrogen is a must until we have transitioning policies in place to completely phase out to green, which will eventually happen by let's say 10 to 15 years down the line if we take a realistic approach to it. So in terms of what sort of policy making pillars could facilitate this, we have identified a few. So without getting into nitty-gritties of each of these, I'll just run through some of the policy pillars which we think are very relevant. So the first one would be creating the mandated demand through utilization mandates, which I think is on government's cards already. Second is setting up an interministerial committee to drive cross-sectoral adoption so that we have a regulatory framework in place which could ensure that the mandates which are set are actually are coming onto the ground and we see a real difference. Then we have the sustainable biomass utilization, and I think this is very crucial, not just in terms of producing hydrogen from biomass, but in terms of efficient waste management practices, which I think is very relevant in India's case moving forward. Then we have setting electrolyzer capacity targets, like how we have capacity targets for RE, but have similar capacity targets for electrolyzer, let's say 8 gigawatt by 2030, 15 gigawatt by 2040, and so on. That would just instill investor confidence and also would ensure that we build up our own domestic manufacturing capabilities within this space and try to avoid the solar situation again within the hydrogen domain moving forward. The other point would be linking the RE capacity to the hydrogen production as we have 2030 targets set in place. Alongside that, international trade partnership for technical cooperation and supply chain development would be crucial moving forward too. On the second slide here, we'll be looking at establishing industrial hubs to enable co-location. Thinking about innovative policies like contract for differences, renewable energy certifications, modifications within the no curtailment policy, etc., etc. And as I think Sir within the panel mentioned, the importance of safety is quite crucial within hydrogen given its physical nature. So formulation of codes and standards would be extremely crucial moving forward. Any accidents of sorts will obviously keep the hydrogen race dragging behind. So that's one of the things which is very crucial and top of the agenda, I believe. Alongside that, obviously financial mechanisms like viability gap fundings, ensuring feed-in tariffs are given, ensuring open access, income tax holidays, oil and gas exploration benefits for hydrogen production are considered as well. Alongside that, it is very crucial that a carbon pricing framework is put in place, like how they have in the EU. Putting a cost per ton of carbon is quite crucial for these sort of policies to work in place and for a transition to come out from completely grey hydrogen to green hydrogen. So I believe a carbon pricing framework up top would ensure that this transition to a green hydrogen economy happens as quickly as possible, as we have net zero targets, let's say by 2060. So what is WRI-India doing within this space? At this point, we are supporting policy development and creation of a national hydrogen roadmap in alignment with the NHEM. We are also doing a policy gap analysis within the existing NHEM to identify what sort of improvements could be suggested. We're also developing research tools and studying innovative practices for green hydrogen adoption and deployment, whereby we're looking at offshore wind and what sort of policies from there could be adopted for hydrogen, any sort of new renewable energy technologies, how they took off, and what lessons we could learn for India's case in hydrogen. We're also driving collaboration and cooperation across public and private stakeholders within the hydrogen ecosystem. And we're also trying to identify frameworks to identify focus area of infrastructure development and pilot projects moving forward. As we believe within initial years, pilot project demonstrations and getting a go ahead within that space would be really crucial to upscale the market confidence. So with that context in mind, I'll pass over to Dr. Rupi Agarwal, CEO WRI-India, to moderate the session on hydrogen roadmap to India. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Soham. Thanks, Anandita. This promises to be an exciting session, particularly with the discussions that we had in the previous session. I think it set a good background to the discussions here. But primarily, what we're looking for in this session is looking at what would be the elements of a good hydrogen roadmap for India, a green hydrogen roadmap for India. I mean, a mission document is there, a mission has been announced, but if you have to take that mission to reality, it's very important to have a clear roadmap. What are the actions we are going to take? How do we develop confidence amongst investors that the policy or the statements that we have made out will actually translate into action on the ground? Now, we had 5 panelists on this. If I am not wrong, we have only 3 of them with us right now. I can see Mr. Jyotilal, Mr. Ravi Pandit, and Mr. Banerjee. I think Mr. Malhotra is yet to join us, and Mr. Bhatt is yet to join us. Am I right, Soham and Anandita? Can you help out if they are there? Am I missing them?
Yeah, they are yet to join. Mr. Bhatt will probably be joining towards the end of the session, as informed prior. And yeah, we are trying to get Mr. Malhotra to join the session.
Doesn't matter. So let's sort of start off with those who are already with us, get the discussion starting. What I'm going to do is first go through one round of questions for all of you. We have about 50 minutes, if I'm not wrong. So we'll try to sort of take about 5 or 7 minutes each of you. You have a lot to say. How you condense it into 5 to 7 minutes is going to be your challenge. But let's hear some thoughts on what do you think will be a good roadmap. But then I'll frame it around a few questions. Let me start with Mr. Jyotilal. Jyotilal, you've been actually leading one of the most active states, and I've seen you not just on hydrogen, but on electric mobility, on integrated mobility, on a whole lot of things. And I've often wondered where you get your energy from. But the question is not around that. The question is really around where do you see Kerala, or why do you see Kerala as having the unique advantage to be a front runner in pushing hydrogen adoption in India? You've been really taking this so aggressively, and so interesting to see the initiative that you've taken. But what do you think are Kerala's unique selling proposition for hydrogen? And what specific policies or incentives do you think will help you take this forward in the years to come? Over to you, Jyotilal.
I made 1 or 2 slides. Shall I show it also? Sure. Or yeah, thank you. Yeah, in fact, thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to share some of the thoughts. In fact, Kerala is always been blessed with all the natural resources. All your see how best we make use of the natural resources for our advantage. That's the key. And there's a saying: everyone has to go back to their sources. And source of all elements, 5 elements, is hydrogen. We get energy from sun, but the sun is giving the through fusion. The sun, where is the energy coming from? So as you said, you have to go back to the source. So from hydrogen 1H1, you all with the temperature and pressure, it becomes other carbon and all other elements have evolved from that. So you have to go back to the, so coming back to the, how did we come to the fuel cell and hydrogen fuel cell? We had brought the first EV policy, then we were having the discussion on the Evolve Summit, where the roadmap for the e-mobility has been drafted by WRI. We thank you for that. Then in the discussion, one of the key things which has come is maybe electric mobility or the battery electric vehicles will be ideal for two-wheelers and three-wheelers and up to cars. So beyond that, then total cost of ownership, charging time, weight of the battery, the volume, all these are issues, and disposal of battery, because after 8 years to or 10 years, you need to replace it. So then we need to, then the idea came that, you need to replace the battery with the fuel cell. That is the ideal solution which came up. Then we started doing research on what is fuel cell. That's the first time we got. Then because we put an ambitious target of 3,000 buses, 1,000 trucks, 100 boats. And 100 boats we were able to achieve because we have got a KFW funding for the water metro. There we are now trying with Ravi Pandit, he is giving the technology to Cochin shipyard for making the fuel cell, indigenous fuel cell, which can replace the LTO battery in the water metro boats. Then coming to trucks and buses, the fuel cell is the option so that it will utter all the negativities of what is the battery electric buses. So charging time, because you need a range, you need a TCO to come down, you need a fast charge, fast charging, then you how to store the energy, that's the easiest, maybe the better medium to store energy. So that is the first part of it. Second, so we included the battery electric also as a fuel cell electric vehicle, FCEV and battery EV, both are EVs only. So we stopped differentiating between FCEV and battery electric vehicle. And same treatment, and even road tax, we made it 2.5% for both electric as well as. In fact, we are requesting Government of India that even the GST concession, which is given 5%, should be given to FCEV also. Then we got our first approval for the model project we prepared with our engineering college, which comes under transport department, for a R&D, pilot R&D project with 2 hydrogen cars and 2 hydrogen bus. In fact, let me tell you that Toyota has imported 2 brand new Mirai cars, second generation. Now it has reached on 21st, they will be bringing to Kerala for registration. So that's the first, they imported the Mirai and then they were using it in their factory. Now I think the second generation has come and we got the approval to run it between 2 cities, Trivandrum and Kochi. So we would like to make this as the first hydrogen highway. So why we are going for it? Because Kerala is a green, clean state with a lot of, we have got enough water resources, though we may not have financial resources. My challenge is to how to convert the water resources into hydrogen, to the financial resources. I think if you go by 1874, Mr. Jules Verne has said, a day will come when water will become the fuel of the future, where the coal will not be able to replace the power, the potential of the hydrogen and oxygen which you can generate from the. So in the COVID, we saw the potential, what is the need for oxygen, liquid medical oxygen. So hydrogen gives the energy, oxygen gives you, makes a human being survive. So coming back to that, more the approval we got, then there are a lot of approvals required, PESO approval for cylinders up to 300 bar is allowed. Probably we are trying for up to 900 bar, so that we will be able to fill it to 700 bar in these cylinders, which are made of carbon fiber. So then pilot study, we have done it for Trivandrum and Kochi. Then PESO approvals up to 300 bar has been received. Then Tata Motors is the bus, they brought it, but only the ARI approval certification is awaited. Then we tried with NTPC and IOC. NTPC has now come forward and given a suggestion to give turnkey solution, including the fuel and running of bus or the vehicles on buses on wet lease. They will give on per kilometer basis. So then hydrogen fueling stations are planned in the Cochin International Airport, where we have got excess solar, floating solar, we generate power. So there they can put additional unit around 1.5 acres is requested by the Indian Oil Corporation to set up a fueling station for the feeder buses to the Kochi airport and metro. Then electricity board is also planning how to use solar. Actually, all the 5 elements, whether it is biomass, whether it is solar, whether it is wind or the hydel project, everything energy from any of these 5 elements we can convert into green hydrogen. So KCB is now exploring solar and wind and solar wind, and already hydel they are quite solid. Then last budget which is presented, we have announced that 10 feeder buses for the Kochi metro will be financed for 10 hydrogen buses will be financed, and we will give the VGF, and 10 crores has been allotted. And KMRL is in the final process of finalizing the DPR. I think NTPC is already covered those portions. Then FAME 2, actually our request is that FAME 2 should cover the FCEV also, because both are electric vehicles. Then we have prepared a roadmap for hydrogen economy. Probably I think I have shared it in our group. It is in 3 phases. First we will start with the feeder buses, which is already approved by government. Then it will be intracity. Intracity routes are also identified. Then it will go for intercity. So that's a way. In fact, a lot of good things in Kerala is that we have got LNG, and already we have got companies like Air Products USA, which is generating 3 lakh cubic meters per hour hydrogen for the Cochin refineries. Now it's all used for the industry purposes. So probably they can ramp up the facility and produce enough quantity of hydrogen from the natural gas. But our idea is to switch over to green hydrogen, and TCC is already having alkaline. The hydrogen is a byproduct, but only thing purity is only 99.4%. We need purity up to 99.99 up to 4 digits. So Tanvur Cochin Chemicals is now working on to purify and compress it and then dispense it. Then GAIL has shown interest. NTPC already covered. IOC, then Ador and other companies have now approached us to set up a hydrogen fueling station. In fact, CIAL is going for an expression of interest for industries to set up green hydrogen units. And what we proposed is a hub and spoke model, so that beyond 250 kilometers you cannot transport in the gaseous form. So naturally, either it has to be liquid form. That means between the port it goes into, you can carry it through the waterways. Otherwise, a pipeline up to 200 what we have planned is we have got 3 major ports and 20 total minor ports. So you use the port as a storage place and supply to the nearby towns, so that the entire 500 kilometers will cover. Then the hub and spoke model is what is planned for this thing, and we are funding options. We are approaching the various funding agencies. Now, these are the routes which are identified. Probably the first is starting with the feeder routes, the second is the intracity, and third one is in intercity. And the location for the filling stations are also been planned. Then another major area is, I think I will take 1 more minute. Yeah, water transport is another major area. In fact, now we started with the water metro, but then we will go for the national waterways getting ready. So that Trivandrum, Kovalam to the other end of Kerala, that is in Bekal or Kasaragod, entire stretch is connected to the waterway. So we can't put the electric, the water metro type of boats with LTO battery, because you need to again charge every maybe 100 kilometers. So the only option is go to fuel cell. Already, I think KPIT, Mr. Ravi Pandit is there. He is helping the Cochin shipyard to develop the indigenous fuel cell, so that we can use the waterway for the goods traffic as well as the the passenger traffic. We have formed an SPV called Kerala Water Metro Limited, which can run, which will be able to run these services. And DPR is also getting ready. In fact, Terry, along with the Green Status, in fact, today only just now, 10 minutes back only, I got the approval that they are willing to do the DPR for the entire national waterway, so that the ferries and water boards across the state using fuel cell can be planned. Then another project which we are working as a last mile connectivity, we have got a semi-high speed train which is planned from one end to another with a 200 kilometer speed. those stations as a transit-oriented development and bringing people to the stations and giving the last mile connectivity between the railway station, bus stand, the airport, and the Silver Line station. Now, DPR is being prepared by Sistra. So this will be hydrogen PRT, basically hydrogen ports, which can maybe go up to 15,000 PHPDT. Interlinking all these stations with the Silver Line stations is being prepared. Then skill development, we have got a College of Engineering, I said, SCT College, which is already tied up with the Birmingham City University to offer new courses so that the skill which is required for the industry is ready, whether it is mechatronics or using the fuel, how the storage, compression, etc. Then another very important aspect is the storage and compression cost is slightly high. So what we are looking at is R&D on how to use ammonia as a fuel, especially in the marine sector, and methanol. Methanol up to 20% is allowed, 5% blending already they are doing. IOC itself is doing. Now, Ashok Leyland along with the IIT Madras is working on how to use methanol as a fuel with the M100 engines, and to start with the M20, so that 20%, and the only thing the additives, right additives to prevent corrosion. That is that research is going on. That will be a major breakthrough once M100 engines and methanol directly as a fuel comes about. So this in nutshell is our plan. So thank you for giving an opportunity to share some of my thoughts.
Thanks very much. It's really fascinating to see how you have such a, very well encompassing, all-rounded kind of set of actions. You've looked a lot around the demand side, where the applications will happen, and also leveraged a lot of the natural resource assets that Kerala has. So it's really fascinating to see that. What I would request is if you could share that presentation with us. I think a lot of people on the, amongst the audience would be interested in taking a look at that. That will be really nice. Now with that, you've mentioned about Mr. Ravi Pandit a number of times and the way he's been supporting the Cochin shipyards. So with that, let me move over to Mr. Pandit. Mr. Pandit, in fact, we've been talking a lot to him, and he has been a great champion of hydrogen for quite some time. But my question to you, Mr. Pandit, is, really moving on to the production side. I mean, do you see any trends or opportunities beyond electrolysis for green hydrogen production? A lot has been talked about using water and electrolysis to produce hydrogen, but you've often been talking about biomass. So what opportunities do you see beyond electrolysis, and what kind of supportive financial mechanisms do you think will help drive the costs of green hydrogen to $2 or less? Over to you, Mr. Pandit.
Thank you, OP. And I must also thank Mr. Jyotilal for that fascinating presentation. So, the way I look at it is, of course, we need to look beyond electrolysis to go to hydrogen. And I think we need to look at both green hydrogen as well as non-green hydrogen. On the green hydrogen side, I feel we have a phenomenal opportunity using biomass to generate hydrogen. And we can do it from cellulosic biomass, like the plant with Punjab and Haryana. So I think we can use that to generate hydrogen from that. We can also contemplate using other non-cellulosic biomass, like even urban solid waste, to generate hydrogen. Both these areas are extremely exciting. These are a very good substitute for all other mechanisms of generation of hydrogen, which depend on either heavy imports or which don't solve any other problem. Whereas management of generation of hydrogen from biomass can solve our pollution problem in both cities as well as outside cities. We believe that can be made in a very cost-effective manner. Recently, working with Agarkar Institute, we even announced a technology which gives an extremely efficient way of generating hydrogen from biomass. That is as far as the green hydrogen is concerned. I think in the initial stages, we should not be too concerned about the color of the hydrogen. I would recommend that we can afford to be a bit colorblind. So I think we should look at blue or gray hydrogen as well. We have a lot of coal. Coal methanol is a route which is part of the gray hydrogen, but you can capture that CO2 and make that into a blue hydrogen. I believe we should look at that. We should look at natural gas as well. We make available the full spectrum of hydrogen for the industry at this point in time. Our own thought is that today we have to be more concerned about getting the requisite quantum of hydrogen and not just with the only single color of hydrogen. Now the question is, how do we make that happen? Now you see, there are policies already in place which can be adapted to generation of hydrogen. The government recently announced its intention to cover electrolyzer development in the PLI scheme. We can look at something similar when it comes to generation of hydrogen from all other sources, such as the biomass, both cellulosic as well as non-cellulosic. There are currently policies relating to generation of CNG from biomass. The same policies can be very fairly and rightly extended to cover hydrogen. So all this can bring down actually the cost of the hydrogen. An important message that we need to really work on is that, see, world over now there is a price for carbon. EU has announced a price for carbon. Even China has announced a price for carbon. And if we can have biomass farming or energy farming for hydrogen generation, it can give a huge impetus to our agricultural sector, as well as it can get us money for carbon capture. So India has vast degraded lands. India has actually even good lands put into such crops that are rotting in our warehouses. So if we can direct some of these lands for bioenergy farming, and if we can make available carbon credits for that, then I think we can give extremely high rewards to the farmers who will generate such biomass. And from such biomass, we can develop fully green, very low cost and high quality hydrogen. So I think policy support is required at multiple areas, but all these areas have been touched upon by our current policies relating to either PLI or batteries or bio-CNG, etc. We just have to extend them to hydrogen. We believe it is eminently doable. We believe that hydrogen is the correct route to follow, no matter what color it is, because we will be cutting down our multiple problems. We'll be reducing our problem of import of fuel. We'll be reducing our problem of pollution in all our major cities. We'll reduce our problem of penury in our farming sector. So I think these are very, very doable steps. And I think it's time that we get into it. As you rightly mentioned, Obi, some time back, the government has come up with a hydrogen mission. But now we have to put a lot of meat around that skeleton. And I think these are the kind of things that we should go out with and talk about, because we can really make a significant change in our national scene. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mr. Pandit. It's always a delight hearing you. And your point about let's create the market for hydrogen, then worry about the color. I think the production can come from whatever source, but if the demand side starts looking for hydrogen and gets sort of embedded into various production processes, transportation processes, I think moving to green hydrogen thereafter is okay. So I think that's a very good point. Let me, Mr. Pandit, if I'm not wrong, I think you had to leave at 5 or something.
That is right, exactly at 5.
In that case, can I just add one more question for you?
Sure.
You've been a champion on biomass. You've spoken a lot about using biomass as a source for hydrogen, urban solid waste as a source for hydrogen, number of other sources of this nature. In the last session also, we heard a number of speakers talking about the huge potential of biomass. And if I got it right, almost saying that biomass can meet a lot of our requirements. It's not just a marginal set of requirements, but a significant part of our requirements can be met for biomass. But do you think this would cause a threat to food security issues, or land being diverted for producing hydrogen or feedstock for hydrogen being taken away from food sources? Do you think there is a risk of that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. See, so I think we have to look at what kind of biomass that we are talking about. One can talk about bio-waste. So we talk about rice straw or wheat straw. And that, of course, is like a complementary thing to our food requirement. Okay, so there is no conflict of food versus fuel when it comes to any rice straw, wheat straw, etc., or for that matter, sugarcane bagasse. So that question doesn't arise. We have done extensive analysis currently in Maharashtra, and we are also doing a similar analysis in Gujarat, MP, and Bihar to find out what is the other agricultural biomass which is available. So in Maharashtra, for example, you get a lot of cotton straw, you get a lot of soya. Now, these are some things which are waste, otherwise burnt. And if we can use them for biomass, for hydrogen generation, again, there is no question of any conflict. The third one is solid urban waste, municipal solid waste. There again, there is no question of any conflict. Now, these are the clear candidates where without any food versus fuel debate, we can certainly go for hydrogen generation through biomass. Now, coming to the question of bioenergy plantation. If we can use land which is not fit for agriculture, the wasteland, and we have plenty of it. If we can use that, we are actually again not getting into the food versus fuel debate. That can be done. And most importantly, the way I look at it, look at our current situation. Our warehouses are overflowing with grains. We are still paying our farmers for them. And I'm sure next year we will have a serious problem as to what to do with those grains. Why can't we divert a part of that acreage to doing bioenergy farming? We can do that without actually stretching our requirements or our fulfillment of food needs. So to me, it's a completely complementarity situation. It's a complementary picture. We should really examine it in that context. At no point in time, I think anybody would support going for fuel when food is a problem. Nobody would support it. But I think there is ample scope for doing both rather than one or the other.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's very comforting that there's no risk of food versus fuel kind of competition coming up, and it is a great source for hydrogen. So thank you so much on that. I find Mr. Malhotra has also joined us. That's very nice. Welcome, Mr. Malhotra. Before I come to you, let me.
My apologies. I had some urgent work in office, and some people had come whom I could not ignore. So
that's fine. That's fine. Really nice.
Just concluded a little. Try to finish a little early. Yes, I'm sorry. I have not heard any views. Others, what have they said?
Well, let me move to Mr. Banerjee. We'll come back to Mr. Malhotra after this. So, Mr. Banerjee is the Director General of SIAM, the Society for Automobile Manufacturers. He represents the auto manufacturing industry. A lot of hydrogen is really going to be impacting the auto industry. And given that, what are your views on the impact on the auto industry when hydrogen happens? How will that, the investment they need to make, what kind of expectations do you have there? Second, your views on the recent tender that was issued for hydrogen-based, fuel cell buses using green hydrogen, and particularly for use in Ladakh. I think that's really fascinating. What are your views on this? And do you see that initiatives of this nature can help scale up the market? I mean, often what we've been told is that orders for a few vehicles here and there do not convey or do not give us the confidence that we should invest adequately in higher production levels. What is the kind of market signals you would need for the industry to really go in a big way for these kinds of vehicles? Mr. Banerjee, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, and thank you very much, WRI, for giving the platform to SIAM to air industry views on this very important topic of future fuel hydrogen. Also, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Indian automobile industry, I would like to first compliment WRI as well as Mr. Jyoti Lal present here for his initiatives on renewable source of energy and its application in transportation. So, Mr. Al, thank you for your leadership. As far as the hydrogen goes, industry is very clear. Many studies also support, corroborate, and substantiate that hydrogen is a future fuel. Now, from industry point of view, we are having a multiple fuel options. We are having short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. And also, business environment needs a very clear, stable, and consistent policy measures. So therefore, we talk about methanol, we talk about ethanol, we talk about biomass usage, we talk about hydrogen usage, we talk about EVs, and we talk about synthetic fuels, so on and so forth. But the foremost consideration from the national priority point of view, the first, which is a short-term one perhaps, is the management of energy security for the country, local pollution mitigation, and of course our international commitment on GHG, global warming, and COP commitment. And the fourth one is the import imbalance. So if you look at all these four considerations, then obviously hydrogen is holding a very long-term prospect, and decarbonization of the transportation is the need of the hour. So the moment you talk about decarbonization of transportation, hydrogen is obvious choice for zero carbon scenario. So obviously it's a future fuel. So we very, very promisingly work towards it. And the very interesting part is that battery electric vehicle components and hydrogen fuel cell vehicle components are more or less same. It's only the energy source is changing. So to that extent, it's a very, very complementary or supplementary scenario where we are actually entering from existing IC engine scenario to the battery electric vehicle, or first hybrid and then battery electric vehicle, and then eventually to moving to fuel cell vehicles. So in a way, what we see that working on hydrogen is not only good for long term, but also it gives us enough experience of how to migrate without much distress. So sustainable mobility needs also demand that India is actually at this point in time in a cusp where hydrogen exploration is good for us. And I completely agree with Mr. Pandit that we should be colorblind as far as the hydrogen color goes, and we should keep going ahead with our long-term intentions. And the intention of transportation industry to use hydrogen, obviously the steps are very clear. First, technology feasibility in transportation industry. Second, demonstration of some of the pilot projects, followed by application in a mass mobility requirements, followed by infrastructure creation, demand creation, supply chain management, and of course ensuring customer delight, which is also a part of awareness, because many a times if you are not creating customer with sufficient awareness about the safety aspects, the misconceptions may be there. So therefore, for us, we are very clear that safety regulations, the motor vehicle regulations, and of course the PESO request for allowing the higher pressure cylinder storage, and the application of these hydrogen vehicles in different parts of the country should be permitted. Now coming to the question of demonstration projects of Leh, and also of course the IOCL orders of 15 vehicles to Tata Motors. I think it's very fascinating to see that IOCL order has encompassed every aspect of proto building to running the vehicle on road, and that kind of support goes in a long way to demonstrate, build confidence of hydrogen usage in the transportation sector. When it comes to specifically you're asking about the Leh, I think the 5 vehicle number is pretty less, because as you know that if you are aware that vehicle demonstration or vehicle platform development program is a very integrated activity, and it takes a lot of resources. So thereby, we need to be very clear that in a long-term roadmap, what path we are choosing. Even 5 vehicles or 12 vehicles or 15 vehicles goes in a big way to build confidence. It gives us the performance learning of the vehicle. It gives the unique requirement of India, thermal management aspects. It requires, it gives the handling of hydrogen aspect. So it gives a build confidence. But I think we should have a very clear roadmap. How do we scale up these experiences? And that's where I would request that IOCL kind of demonstration project initiatives, which is very comprehensive one, we should try to adopt. The layer one is good, but I don't think it's generating enough interest because the number of vehicles is only 5. So for five vehicle, people may not be interested to put so much of resources with no clarity in future what will hold good for us. Also, as I mentioned that for us, biomass is talked about. Mr. Pandit talked great about biomass usage for hydrogen generation, but right now the priority for the government is perhaps generation of CNG and conversion of biomass to produce ethanol and coal production to methanol. So we are actually right now in dialogue with Niti Aayog for methanol as well as for ethanol. So for us, there are multiple fuel options wherein we can't really put all our resources at this point in time because the resources are always stretched. So it would be a good idea if we have a very clear steps defined in time horizon, and that's where the industry can do wonders. And I think for India, hydrogen is standing out a very clear panacea for long-term future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. I think you really articulated it very well. Just having a few buses is not going to be enough. You need much more of a roadmap, a visibility of larger numbers. I think that point is very well taken. You've also sort of talked about the need for a clear roadmap, what actions will happen over the next few years. I think that point is very well taken. I think that is something that we in WRI are also working on to, prepare from our side what a potential roadmap could look like. So thanks very much, Mr. Banerjee. Let me now move to Mr. Malhotra. Mr. Malhotra is the Director General of the Federation of Indian Petroleum Industries. And given the sector that you represent, Mr. Malhotra, one very basic question I would have is really how are the stakeholders within this community, within the oil and gas industries community, how are they envisioning the hydrogen transition? How are they planning to incorporate this into their activities going forward? And what is your federation's outlook on the proposed National Hydrogen Energy Mission? What are the policy recommendations that you would like to suggest? Give us some of your thoughts on this. Over to you, Dr. Malhotra.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. First, apologies again for joining a little late. But let me be clear that the oil and gas sector is one which is with hydrogen. In fact, I used to work for long in Indian Oil, and about 10, 12 years back, we had started the hydrogen research activities, assuming that it will be there in next 10 years or so. And I'm happy that now everybody is talking about hydrogen today, which we started talking about 10 years back. And it is not that our sector is doing it differently. Our sector, fortunately, is one which has got the maximum experience with hydrogen, because our refineries are the largest producers and consumers of hydrogen. So we produce, we consume. Now we know how to produce hydrogen. We know how to play with hydrogen, how to handle hydrogen. So we are all aware about that. So our sector is blessed that way. Now coming on to some of the developments which are happening around us, I personally feel, this is my view, may not be the view of all the people in the industry, but I have shared some of the people, senior leaders from the industry have also said that let us not, and I just heard Mr. Banerjee saying that somebody, Mr. Pandit perhaps said that let us forget the color, or he said we should be color blind. So people start talking only about green hydrogen. You know, we certainly green hydrogen will solve all the issues related to climate change and all that, and so on and so forth. But you just cannot ignore grey hydrogen at this point of time. If you want to usher in hydrogen economy, you have to start with that. If you think that green hydrogen will be available in sufficient quantities and you will push refineries to use 10%, you will push fertilizer plants to use that, the hydrogen capacity which is available with the refineries will be underutilized. So why not that grey hydrogen also help in ushering in the economy? And as we mature in producing more and more renewables, more and more green hydrogen, it should take over. So I would say that let us not be talking about only green hydrogen. Let us say that if the hydrogen economy has to be ushered in fast in the country, we should be starting with grey hydrogen along with side-by-side green hydrogen to the extent possible. Green hydrogen cost is pretty high, $5 to $7 per kg at this point of time. Our refineries produce less than around $1 per kg of hydrogen. So there's a huge cost difference. And if you want hydrogen to be utilized by various industries, including transport sector, I think you have to start with that. Till such time, the cost of electrolyzers, the cost of the whole green hydrogen comes down because of the improved efficiencies of electrolyzers, because of reduced cost, more renewables coming in way. And so this is what I would personally think about using the hydrogen, or producing hydrogen. Because today you cannot have green hydrogen coming in serving all the purposes. If you want to use it in large scale, in not only the transport sector, but in steel plants, in refineries, or in fertilizer, various industries, you can use hydrogen. Steel plants could be big consumers of hydrogen. So I feel that if we are talking about hydrogen economy, let us not say only green, it should be, and side by side work towards it. More resources should be developed. Electric photo analysis, kind of biomass is a good. Mr. Pandit has been always propagating that, and I strongly believe that it's a good source. In fact, I have been asked to chair an expert committee on the coal to hydrogen by the Ministry of Coal last week. They have given me that assignment. And I feel it is a very, very responsible way of going about it, because we need to side by side develop CCUS technologies for carbon capture, utilization, storage. If we can do that, why not coal to hydrogen? We have, Mr. Banerjee just talked about coal to methanol. We have successfully completed a project in BHEL, which I was overseeing on behalf of the Department of Science and Technology. BHEL gasification unit has been commissioned last week, which is able to produce syngas, which can be converted to methanol. It can always be converted to hydrogen also, that syngas. So there are opportunities available around coal to hydrogen. There are natural gas to hydrogen. We always do that in our in our sector, and eventually the green hydrogen. So all hydrogens should be used. Biomass to hydrogen also has a great potential. In fact, when I was at Indian Oil, before I joined this federation after my superannuation from Indian Oil, we had developed a patented process for coal, petcoke, and biomass co-gasification. Because Indian coal has high ash and there were some difficulties, or BHEL has incidentally solved that. But at that time, we thought that petcoke is produced in our refineries. Biomass, Mr. Pandit has also perhaps mentioned before I joined in. So there is great potential for producing hydrogen from all these coal, petcoke, biomass. And if you integrate with CCUS technologies, capture that carbon dioxide, convert it into chemicals, or fix it otherwise, I don't personally see any bias should be there against that kind of hydrogen. Ultimately, you may develop sufficient of renewable capacity to produce. You should have enough of electricity so that you can produce cost-effective and technologies to produce cost-effective hydrogen. So that's on hydrogen side, production side. Then on the second aspect, which I would like to just mention quickly, is about safety codes and standards. You need safety codes and standards in this country. People talk. Mr. Banerjee mentioned about high pressure storage, etc. PASO need to look at high pressure storage be allowed. the regulatory body. Government has constituted a committee last week, which is going to look into this high pressure storage system, which is a must. So that's on, so that transportation becomes more cost effective. And then fuel cell developments is happening. Mr. Pandit's company has developed some fuel cells. I was glad to see some pictures today. Somebody forwarded it to me. I wanted to compliment Mr. Pandit. I don't know whether he's online or not. With Mahindra's, he has developed a fuel cell car, which I just saw some pictures forwarded to me by a friend. So I think that's also going to happen. And as we move along, I think we'll have plenty of hydrogen from various sources, which can be used in transport sector, which can be used in industrial sector, steel sector, fertilizers, industry, etc., etc. So I see great potential and hope that we'll see more and more hydrogen usage. And the energy side is the fuel of the future. I believe the time has come. It is the fuel of not of the future. Now it's the time for hydrogen to be used.
Thanks very much, Mr. Malhotra. I think Mr. Banerjee had earlier mentioned 4 different objectives of moving to hydrogen. And green hydrogen is primarily focused on one of those 4. And you very rightly said that let's be a little colorblind, let's fulfill the other obligations. That can happen through any of the other colors and slowly, simultaneously move towards green. So that point is taken. I think that's been the trend that everyone has been talking about. We are fortunate, we have Mr. Bart, who has also joined us now. Mr. Bart Debyuk,
Yes.
He's the executive director of the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking of the EU. Mr. Bart, the question I have for you is, we've been talking about these different colors, and blue hydrogen really needs carbon capture, utilization, and storage, CCUS, as we call it. You can convert brown hydrogen or gray hydrogen into blue by using CCUS. And do you see this as a feasible option in the Indian context? There has been a lot of skepticism about this in the past few months, particularly about its cost and how efficient it can be. But can you throw some light on that and how feasible is this in the Indian context? Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So first of all, I agree that, or I'm convinced that we will need blue hydrogen. Blue hydrogen means then the CCUS to get to the goals that we have all set. I mean, mainly the Paris goals. We have today, and I just give you the example in Europe. I mean, we have today already 10 million tons of gray hydrogen that we consume today. I mean, fertilizer industry is one of the main users, but also in other industries, like they use somehow also for the refineries and so on. So what is the main goal is, first of all, to get rid of the gray hydrogen as soon as possible in Europe. And I believe that should be the same target also in India. And we also know that having the green hydrogen in this amount would take a lot of time. I mean, we don't have the renewables, at least here in Europe. I think you're a bit more fortunate in India. You have a lot of a lot of sun as well. So I think you might be able to produce faster, more green hydrogen than we in Europe. But anyway, it will take time. And so in order to make that transition from the gray to the green, because we all agree that green is the final goal, but to make that transition, you need blue. Now, we know that blue is a bit more expensive than the gray because, of course, I mean, you have to store and capture the CO2, but it's not so much. I mean, when we saw the numbers, the costs of itself, it's just slightly above the gray. So, what I always say is that let's not try to subsidize also too much blue, because in a way you have already a business case. So we should, by a regulatory framework, I mean, by policies, we should try to push for the blue as well, but not subsidize it. I mean, I think the subsidies has to go clearly to the green hydrogen, because if you subsidize the blue hydrogen, you will delay the rollout of the green hydrogen. So that we should not do. So, but from a policy point of view, we should let the blue hydrogen, because we will need it. If I just do very quickly the calculation for Europe, I mean, you saw the European targets by is about 10 gigawatts by or 6 gigawatts by 24, 40 gigawatts by 2030. By 40 gigawatts, probably we will produce 10 million tons of green hydrogen, which is exactly the consumption today. But we also know that in 10 years' time, we will need much more hydrogen than what we consume today, be it in the steel industry, be it in other transportation for trucks. So we will not be able to cover, even in 2030, all the hydrogen needs by only green. So that's why we need blue. Because if you do not allow blue, of course, you will have to use gray. But that means that you increase your CO2 footprint. So it would, in a way, it would be stupid. So that's why you need blue hydrogen. Yes, maybe it's a bit more low efficiency. Yes, there is maybe a bit more energy necessary, but the key point is our CO2 targets. I mean, there is no other way. And steel industry, for example, you cannot decarbonize steel without hydrogen. So it's still better to use blue hydrogen than gray hydrogen because it has no CO2 emissions. So that's a bit my view on that. We need blue, but try to reduce gray as much as possible.
Good. I think that's a powerful message. You need blue. We can't look away from blue. And the important message that you gave is the cost is not so much more. And it is better to meet that cost through regulation rather than through subsidies. Great. Now, unfortunately, we have crossed our time. I will have to say thank you very much to everyone. I was hoping we could go around for some response to questions and maybe a second round of discussions. Unfortunately, the time doesn't permit us. But let me use this opportunity to thank all of you, Dr. Malhotra, Mr. Jyotilal, Mr. Ravi Pandit, Mr. Banerjee, and Mr. Bhatt. Thank you very much. Look forward to interacting with all of you as we move ahead. And once again, thank you very much from WRI.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.